What up, folks? Smalls here. So in episode 1, I offered the example of my moms and I. Despite very similar faces and both being adult black women, having two very different experiences trying to get the same medication filled at a pharmacy, largely due to perceptions about our age, income, background, etc. Very often when I experience discrimination, I'm not sure if it's because of racism or sexism or ageism or classism or another ism, depending on how I'm presenting or if I've spoken yet, right? And more often than not, it's probably all of the above, or at least a combination of factors. This is because I'm never just one part of my identity at a time. I don't have that privilege. I'm all of my identities at the same time. It took me a while to understand this, what it means to be black and woman at the same time, all the time, and how my experience as a black woman is different than that of a white woman's or a black man's. Basically what I'm talking about is intersectionality, which is a term coined by scholar Kimberly Crenshaw. I would implore you to look her up. She's amazing. Once I understood that, for me, the next question was, how do layers of my identity that are less visible or invisible factor into the discrimination or oppression I experience and how I navigate systems or how I move through the world? The layer that stands out the most for me is my invisible disability. Now, this conversation about the curse of invisible disabilities is one that I would love to be ongoing and to continue. And I say continue because when I was doing my research, I realized much of what I was gonna say has already been said. And I am a big believer in not taking up unnecessary space or echoing when amplifying would be better, more beneficial, or more efficient. There's a really dope quote that says, "Open your mouth only if what you're going to say is more beautiful than silence." And I'm pretty sure my fellow introverts see the beauty in that one too. This does not discount in any way the importance of storytelling or exchanging stories. 100 different people could experience the same thing and come away with 100 different stories to tell, all of which are valid and vital and important to hear. This is because our perspectives are different and the lenses through which we see the world are different and unique and informed by the different layers of our identity and lived experiences. So be sure to check the description box for links and keep watching for the stories of other invisible disability warriors. Invisible disability, in simple terms, is a physical, mental, or neurological condition that limits a person's movements, senses, or activities and is invisible to the outside world. It's pretty simple. It means exactly what it sounds like. The one that stands out for me is access to handicapped spaces or equipment, or the policing of my use of these spaces and equipment. My first taste of judgment in this area, harassment, was in junior high school. I was in a wheelchair for about 30 days, which my pediatric hematologist had insisted on to give both of my hips a rest at the same time. So obviously my legs could still move, I could still walk and do other things. Classmates didn't really understand that, and so fellow students at Redwood Christian White Supremacist Junior High and High School laughed at me and told me I was faking it. Didn't ask for clarification and say, hey, I'm confused, just laughed and insisted I was faking it. Whatever it is, since I never claimed to be like paralyzed or like incapable of moving. Anyway, so it was then that my doctor filled out the necessary paperwork for a disability placard, and because sickle cell is a chronic illness and I would need it again in the future, he just made it a permanent one, and I've had it ever since. I didn't notice any glares or questioning looks at first, probably in large part because I wasn't driving then, and I also wasn't using it all the time, just only when I needed it. As I got older, however, I became much more self-conscious about it, and that's sort of just actually gotten worse with time, probably because the abuse has gotten worse. And I started to notice the glares and the scoffs and the mumbling and the pointing in my direction. And you know, my first really startling interaction over this was with a cop at the airport, which if you're black or brown, this probably comes as no surprise to you. Basically, he was verbally abusive. There's no other way to put it. I could use euphemisms. That's what it was. It was verbal abuse. I was in a disability designated space, parking space, and when I realized he didn't think it was mine, I tried to show him my paperwork and ID. And he responded, well, you probably stole it like the rest of them. okay. I was with my mom's and a friend, and he basically ended by dismissing us and telling us to go back to where we came from, which caught me really off guard because it was my first time hearing that, but also because we were literally returning home. Anyway, that incident seemed to open the floodgates of abuse and harassment, and since then I've been stopped, approached, harassed, threatened, and more over my use of disability designated spaces or equipment. The worst of which comes in the form of threatening to sick the cops on me, which to me is very much reminiscent of random folks threatening to sick slave patrol on me unless I show them my papers and they're satisfied with the proof. You know, speaking of that, I recently watched another disabled YouTuber suggest to folks not to approach people they suspect to be abusing placards or designated spaces, and to just notify the police instead and let them handle it, which is a very privileged and oblivious suggestion. I would never sick the police on a person of color. Ever. Anyway, it's another discussion. But as I've endured more abuse from strangers about my use of disability designated spaces, I've found ways to cope. Good and bad, consciously and unconsciously. Some I'm okay with, others I'm not proud of. Like, for example, I've resorted to keeping a picture of my papers at the ready. Papers, oh God. The paperwork that DMV gives, I keep a picture of it on my phone, you know, for when I'm with other folks or using any spaces not in my car. And in my car, I keep the paper, that one and every placard I've had previously, because ours get renewed automatically every 2 years. And so we get a new paper every 2 years, and I have all of them in my car on my door, like in my door compartment, and I keep them there so that I don't have to like reach in my glove compartment or center console if a cop is like asking me for my papers. I just want to be able to like access it real quick. Here you go, here's ID. I also keep my wallet in like my cup holder like out. One that I'm not so proud of is I've noticed me unconsciously give myself visible markers of pain that aren't already there, whether it's limping or walking away from the space slower or sitting down slowly. And when I catch myself, I correct it. And then I give myself a nice, stern and compassionate lecture, but it's always frustrating and anxiety inducing each and every time. Honestly, there's really only one thing you need to do if you're worried someone is abusing disability designated spaces or equipment. That is mind your business. Do not send police officers or security to disabled folks, especially black and brown folks. Just mind your business and tell your grandmothers to mind theirs, okay? Other people's experiences differ. For me, the most bold, the most abusive, the most harassing are always old white women. But they're always white. Every single person that has ever questioned my use of spaces or threatened me or harassed me has been a white person. Now, the policing of handicapped spaces and disability designated equipment isn't the only curse of invisible disabilities. So I asked a few other invisible disability warriors to share some of theirs. So Auntie Max, she's like a play auntie, because that's how we do it in the black community, who is also not actually old enough to be my auntie. Well, I mean, I guess you could be any age and be an auntie, but you know, anyway. She says, you already got my biggest one, the policing of handicapped spaces. But my second one are these comments. 1, you don't look sick. 2, you were just doing XYZ yesterday. Now you're sick? That's how sickness works, guys. Anyway. And 3, I have insert completely different illness here, and I can do insert whatever you're trying to manipulate me into doing. I've heard number 1, the second 2 and 3. Y'all gotta do better. So Sid says, oh my God, the unsolicited advice from well people, or well people using my illness to shill their products. No, Christy, I'm not interested in snorting cinnamon. Believe it or not, Dan, working up a sweat is not going to suddenly cure me. I'm sure those weird detox teas are wonderful, Karen, but unless you're gonna give them to me for free, I'm not interested in trying them. Shamanica Wiggins says, I hate that we don't look sick, because when we do utilize things such as handicap spots or handy carts in stores, we're looked at sideways. I've had people to tell me to get out of that cart playing, and I give them a quick sickle cell rundown. Then they're looking stupid and saying the famous, "I'm so sorry to hear that." That's always weird when people say that. Stop saying that. Stop apologizing when you hear somebody has a chronic illness. Just, it's not a comforting sentiment. Just like, don't do it, okay? Don't do it. She also goes on to say, everything is questioned or doubted. You can't possibly be that tired. You're too young for your back to hurt. You sure you feel bad? Because you look great. What? I have had people ask if I'm sure I'm sick, or if I'm sure I'm in pain, or if I'm sure the pain is where I just said it was. How'd that work? How? Huh, Susan? How does that work? What did I just tell you? Didn't I just say I was in pain? So you gonna ask me if I'm sure I'm in pain? No, let me check with my body again and get back to you. She also says, oh, and the fact that we look young. I know later in life we'll love it, but being well into my 20-somethings, I get tired of my age being questioned or people handling me like a child. I have to quickly inform them I am grown. I've been grown. Now get out of my face. Just a quick note on that. So a lot of people don't know this, but folks with sickle cell definitely affects puberty very often, and most of us look way younger than normal. So you factor in black already don't crack, or like the more melanin you have, the better you age, on top of still looking like a child at 40 or like a teenager at 40. It happens. This is probably part of the reason why I'm mistaken for a high schooler so much. I am not in high school. And again, saving my favorite for last, this one is from Tremaine Hawkins. She says, I hate when people don't see the connection between sickle cell and mental health. I have pain, I get sad, quiet, and become a hermit. Who wants to go out sick? People don't get why I'm depressed so much, or why I don't want to hang out sometimes. Yeah, chronic illness and mental health, sickle cell and mental health is definitely something we're going to be talking about. We'll have a whole episode dedicated to that. I would love to hear your feedback on that, to hear from you guys on that. I would love to collaborate with some chronic illness folks, some sickle cell warriors out there who are dealing with their chronic illness and mental health as a result of that, or just concurrently in general. Part 2 of this is definitely going to include a discussion on capitalism and disability because, whoa, that's going to take some time. And it's an important discussion that we have in a capitalist society. I'm not even gonna get into it right now. But anyway, so in the next part of this video, this episode will discuss capitalism and disability. Being too sick to work full-time, not sick enough for disability insurance or government assistance or whatever. Keeping a job with a chronic illness, and a whole lot more. Give me your input. I would love to hear from you all. How has the invisibility of your chronic illness or disability affected you? Specifically, other folks not being able to see it. Whether it's doctors relying on lab work to assess your pain. Doctors, please stop doing that. Don't do that. My hemoglobin cannot tell you how much pain I am in. Period. That's not how it works. Or employers not understanding. Maybe I'll talk about how I was fired from a job once for having a disability and being unable to stand 8, 10, 12 hours at one time, which nobody should have to do, let alone somebody with a chronic illness like sickle cell disease. So anyway, I would love to hear from you all, so drop a comment and share the knowledge. And until next time, go out there and be seen, fight hard, and stay tuned for a year of Septembers. Peace.